This is the story of Scotty, the biggest T-Rex in the world.
So the measurement that describes Scotty as the biggest was actually based on a metric that basically extrapolates from the length of the femur, so that's the upper leg bone, called the femoral circumference length. From that metric, you can actually extrapolate the size of an animal, and specifically the weight of an animal. And so this was the metric that they used. They looked at Scotty, measured the femur, and used that calculation, and that was how they extrapolated the size of the animal. So this is the real femur of Scotty. So this is the actual fossil. This thing weighs about probably close to 200 pounds. This is very heavy. And it gives you a sense of how the bone is prepared. So this stuff in here is plaster. So what they've done is they basically poured plaster into the gaps between the bones where it's broken, and that just strengthens it, which makes it safe to transport as well as to store.
Believed to be a female, Scotty measured over 13 meters, or just over 42 feet long, and with a weight of 8.8 metric tons. Discovered in the dinosaur-rich Frenchman Formation, Scotty's bones have been carefully preserved and are stored at the T.rex Discovery Centre in Eastend, Saskatchewan.
This is where the actual bones of the animal are. The real bones that were dug out of the ground, they were brought to Eastend, they were prepared here, they're now curated here, basically stored here. And when people want to come and study Scotty, this is where they come. And so what you see in our gallery, both in Eastend and Regina, is effectively a copy or a replica of those bones. So what the paleontologists did was they would take the original bones, they would make a cast of them, fill those casts with a molding material, and then that is what is made into the skeletons. So there are actually 4 casts of Scotty in the world. The one here in Eastend, the one in Regina, there's one in Japan, and there's also one in Australia. So Scotty is a world traveler.
Just a little history, Emily. I believe in '91 we were wandering around somewhere about here, and so in the afternoon we found a vertebrae of Mrs. T-Rex.
Discovered by retired teacher and Eastend resident Robert Gebhardt. His fascination with paleontology led him to become friends with paleontologists T.rex and John Storr. And in August of 1991, Robert volunteered to be part of an expedition with Tim and John that would forever change the world of paleo in Saskatchewan.
Yes, they got in contact with me and said, we're going out, want to come along? So I went out, and it was a matter of collecting some fossils, like bagging some material and hauling it back to the vehicle. And then we had our lunch, and in the afternoon it was exploration time, which I thought was fantastic, a nice way to top off the day. If you consider the local terrain, there's the top of the hills, and then it can drop down, and then it may flatten out a little bit, and then drop down, and then there may be a gully, and then water erodes as it normally does. And what I came across, the first thing that I noticed was a vertebrae, which was the size of a pie plate. If one has lived in the countryside a fair bit, you get to know the size of vertebrae of a cow or a horse. This was considerably larger.
Although it was positively identified as a T-Rex vertebrae, it would take another 3 years before Scotty would be unearthed, a distinction that falls to T.rex.
Visible at the site was bones encased in ironstone. You can tell there's bones, but you really couldn't tell what part of the animal it was, or was it in fact T-Rex. But as I dug back a couple of feet from the original site, the original layer, I found a tooth, which in itself is very exciting.
That made it a little more exciting. Then to this other side here, I dug down a bit, and I found the other tooth. I found the other tooth that was same position, a little bit smaller, but same position, same angle, and was going back into bone. That automatically confirmed that we did have T-rex, since the teeth are still in the jaw.
That's when it got exciting, because if the teeth are being trapped, then the rest of the body should be trapped too. For 5 minutes, I went running around chain smoking and swearing. That was the realization that we had a T-rex skeleton. The question was, how are we going to get it out?
As excitement grew, several details still needed attention. With the discovery occurring on private land, approval by the landowner was mandatory in moving forward. The site was also difficult to get to, creating challenges for the transportation of the fossil remains. As well, additional financial resources were required to fund an unscheduled excavation of this size. By June of 1994, the funding was in place courtesy of the Royal Saskatchewan Museum and the province of Saskatchewan. Tim and his team were now free to unearth the secrets that had been hidden for millions of years.
We worked our butts off to see if we can find out where the rest of the skeleton was, and we kept finding bone upon bone upon bone, but it wasn't making any sense. It wasn't like a chicken lying on its side. It was a regurgitated omelet. The bones were stacked all over the place. There was no rhyme or reason for where the next bone was. But we knew that those new bones that we were uncovering were wrecks. So we knew we had a skeleton of some sort. The problem again became how thick the layer of the bones were. We were able to take off some of the smaller bones over top of other bones, but when you're looking at a bone that's 3 feet long, say a rib partially embedded with other ribs, you can't separate them, so you get a big block. And these blocks are getting humongous.
With the dig now underway, interest from the public began almost immediately. Seizing on this opportunity, the Eastend Community Tourism Association began offering tours. Soon, people from all across the world were watching the discovery unfold.
This opened up quite quickly because our organization in town here decided that what we would do, with the approval of RSM, is that we'd set up tours out to the dig site. And that's one of the things you don't hear much about in terms of paleo people. For example, down in the States, they do all this somewhat secretively until they have the thing out and about, then it's brought to the public's attention. This one, the public could come out, and we had people from all over the world coming out to view the dig.
And that was a tremendous effort by the community to do that. They were responsible for all the tourism activity that was around. Well, it wasn't our responsibility. We were focused on just on the skeleton. Over this successful summers of extracting this thing, all in front of tours and stuff like that, we ended up flipping one of the biggest blocks that I've ever flipped. That's the most religious moment of paleontology, is that flip. Because even though you've cut down underneath it, you're not 100% certain that you've captured everything.
With huge pieces of fossil being unearthed, it was decided that a temporary research facility would be established in Eastend. This would serve as a temporary space for ongoing fossil research and also a place where the public could view the remains. However, there were even bigger plans. In 1991, the community of Eastend had commissioned a feasibility study for the creation of a paleo museum. And now, thanks to the discovery, Scotty would become the star attraction and help make the museum a reality. In 1998, construction began on the T.rex Discovery Centre, with the doors opening in 2002.
T.rex Discovery Centre, when it first opened, was owned and operated by the town of Eastend. So for about 10 years, the centre was operated by the town, and the Royal Saskatchewan Museum rented this lab space. And so in 2012, the RSM took over what we call the front-end operations. So that's programming, the research. The gift shop was taken over by our friends group, but the town continues to own this building.
Today, the Discovery Centre is a destination for both tourists and researchers from around the world. The facility features a fully equipped laboratory where fossil preparation, study, and curation occur. There is also a gift shop filled with a number of souvenirs and dinosaur paraphernalia. The main gallery is divided into two eras. The Cenozoic Gallery, or Life After the Dinosaurs, features several life-size skeletons. The Mesozoic, or Time of the Dinosaurs, features life from 66 million years ago. This is Scotty's home. Standing in a menacing pose, Scotty measures 13 meters long and 3.8 meters high. Her powerful jaw is filled with 60 large serrated teeth, perfect for tearing into the flesh of her prey. There are several other T.rex skulls that give the visitor an even greater appreciation of the animal's meat-eating abilities. Despite its appearance, guests can't get enough of Scotty. Along with her sheer size, Scotty also holds another important distinction.
If you cut open a T-rex bones, they actually have growth rings like a tree does. So you can go in and count those and you can estimate how old the animal was. So Scotty was over 30 years old when she died. And that is actually the oldest known T-rex in terms of the age of the individual. So it's possible Scotty might just have died from natural causes, just might have gotten old and died. Scotty does have a whole bunch of what are called paleopathology. So these are injuries that the animal got while it was alive, but injuries that healed. So Scotty has things like broken bones that have healed. There's marks on the face that are consistent with fighting other T-rexes. So T-rexes did this thing called face biting, where they would just bite each other's faces, and that was their kind of territorial dispute or their competition for mates. So Scotty has some of those scars as well. So these are some of the original bones of Scotty. These are a lot of the ribs and some of the teeth. And so the skeleton basically is all in our lab here in Eastend. Some of it's in boxes, some of it's in crates, some are in shelves, and some of the smaller pieces are in cabinets like this one. So this is one of Scotty's actual teeth. And this is one of the more spectacular specimens. T-rex teeth have actually got a couple of unique features to them. From this time period, T-rex is the only large carnivorous dinosaur. And so whenever we find a tooth this size, we know for sure that it comes from a T-rex. One of the indications that it is a carnivorous dinosaur is this ridge along the edge of it here. These are called carnae, these ridges. And along the ridges there are serrations, so just like a tiny steak knife. So if you were to run your finger along it, you would feel it. You would feel those serrations there. This is something that all carnivorous dinosaurs had. And this, we think, is an adaptation for slicing through flesh. T-rex basically didn't chew its food. It had no molars or anything. So these teeth are basically for killing and tearing would be their main function.
As one of two paleontologists that are located in Eastend, Emily discusses the important role she and her colleagues play in today's world.
The saying they always use is, the past is the key to the present. Paleontology is the study of ancient life through fossils. And it is so much more than just going out and digging up dinosaurs. Which is important, like the dinosaurs are an important piece in understanding ancient life. But the dinosaurs are only a very tiny, tiny part of the history of life. And so what a paleontologist's job is to do is to go out there, find these fossils so that we can reconstruct the past history of Earth. This deposit is about 38 million years old. It dates to a time period called the late Eocene. And the biggest animal at this time was these big rhino-like brontotheres that were approaching, well, they were the size of elephants, basically. We can't understand where we are and where we're going in terms of biology and ecosystems unless we understand where we've come from. The big issues today, things like climate change and sea level rise, ocean warming, all of those things have happened in the geologic past. There's very little that Earth has not experienced. And so if we can find those things in the fossil record, if we can understand how biological systems respond to those kind of things, we can help understand how our ecosystems might behave in the future.
Meanwhile, back at the T.rex Discovery Centre, rows of cabinets reveal the thousands of fossils that have been catalogued over the years. Upon closer examination, these fossils reveal a marine reptile heritage.
So here in Eastend, we do have some fairly substantial marine reptile collections from around Saskatchewan. We have marine sites up near Herschel, which is closer to Saskatoon, and many sites along the South Saskatchewan River. And then also there's marine material coming out of the west block of grasslands. So my specialty is ancient marine reptiles, reptiles that lived during the Mesozoic era, so at the same time as dinosaurs, but actually are not related to dinosaurs. Most of them are more closely related to today's snakes and lizards. So I've studied both plesiosaurs, which are the ones with the big long necks and the big paddles that the Loch Ness Monster is usually based off of. And my dissertation, my PhD, was about mosasaurs, which kind of look like giant marine Komodo dragons. They're not directly related. I am pretty much one of the experts in the world right now on Mosasaurus and some of the other closely related mosasaurs, just because I've spent 5 years studying Mosasaurus and seeing more specimens of Mosasaurus than nearly anyone else alive right now.
As Emily and Haley continue their work based at the T.rex Discovery Centre, their passion for what they do, as well as the love they have for the area, continues the tradition that was started in 1994, unearthing the secrets of the Eastend area. Scotty the T-Rex, another story of Saskatchewan's Great Southwest.